Okay, so we are saying that there is local transmission but no community spread. Could you just explain what is the exact difference for us, especially given that the foreign domestic worker was not in the shop and yet she still got it? Also, could we check what is the DORSCON level still at yellow, given that there is local transmission?
Yes, there is limited community spread. In the community transmission, the idea is that there is a contact source of the infection that is not imported. So there is a secondary transmission from one of the infected person to a local. So both are locals. So this is therefore a limited community spread, but it is not a widespread community transmission. And the main difference is that for this particular cluster, we are able to identify all the contacts that are involved, including the source of the infection. As I mentioned, they were involved, they were in contact with a group of Chinese tourists from mainland China. And this particular group of mainland China tourists, we were able to have their names, and we have indication of who were the individual patients that fell ill and were confirmed as a positive case for this novel coronavirus. And therefore, we are able to identify the specific source of the infection. Now there is a local transmission, and there's a limited transmission, and if we are able to ring-fence this particular cluster, then we will be able to control the infection spread. So therefore, we say that this is a limited local transmission. But when you have cases popping up in different parts of Singapore, different clusters occurring, and you may not be able to determine the source of these clusters. You can have a few cases where you have no idea where these cases come from. They do not have a specific source. Then you have a widespread transmission. And when that happens, then we will have to move to a DORSCON orange. So today we are still at DORSCON yellow, but we're watching the situation very carefully, monitoring the developments, and we may adjust as we go along. As I mentioned earlier in my press statement, that we are monitoring and we are quite prepared to adjust our posture and our stance as and when we see the development happening around us.
We treat these cases very seriously. You may remember that in the previous statements we had shared with you information about previous diagnosed cases, and all previous diagnosed cases had a travel history from China, specifically from Hubei province. Today we are reporting to you the first case, or first two cases, where in fact, first three cases where there is in fact no actual travel history. However, as we carry out contact tracing, we believe there is still a link with travelers from China. So it's not a case where these are people getting this infection, coming out, and we have no ability to even find any plausible link or any plausible reason why they should be getting this other than spread from someone in the community. So from this perspective, we still believe that there's some link with travelers that have come from China. One of the cases, in fact, is the domestic assistant of one of the other cases. And from that perspective, there may have been an element of local transmission in a very closed, controlled setting within the home, and therefore that has occurred as well. It's early days yet. We're still continuing to do contact tracing, and we continue to be vigilant for more cases. There may be more cases that come out in relation to the same exposure to travelers from this particular travel group, but that may emerge over the next few days. So we continue to be vigilant, to be on our guard, to determine whether in fact more cases will come up. At this time, we still don't see other cases not linked to any travel from China, and that's why we are saying that at this stage, we don't see that evidence of a free community spread.
Just to clarify, let's say if you have a cluster and you know who was the first patient in that cluster, but you have no clue where this patient got his infection from, then you have a bigger problem, because then you have to figure out that we need to have a strengthened community measures to prevent the person who causes the infection of this cluster, because we are not able to identify who he or she is. Then we need to therefore enhance the protection in the community. But now, for this particular cluster, we are able to establish that the source is from a group of tourists from China, and this tourist has now returned to China, and therefore we are able to contain. If we are able to ring fence this particular group, then we will be able to then manage this particular cluster.